Hello, my best students. Today, you're not just learning English. You're stepping into one of the greatest business stories of all time. From a simple garage in California to the most valuable company on earth. This is the Apple story, told in smooth, clear English just for you. No hard words, no boring grammar, just real English, real growth. So put on your headphones, get comfortable, and let the story begin. Part 1. A simple idea in a small garage. In the early 1970s, two young men living in California shared a passion for technology. Their names were Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. They were not rich, they were not famous, but they were dreamers. Steve Jobs was creative, full of big ideas. He believed in changing the world. Steve Wozniak, often called Woz, was a shy genius. He loved building things, especially computers. At that time, computers were large, expensive machines. Only companies, universities, and the government used them. People couldn't imagine having a computer at home. But Wozniak had a different idea. He wanted to build a small computer, one that could sit on a desk and be used by anyone. So he started working in his garage. He didn't have fancy tools. He didn't have a team. He just had his hands, his mind, and a clear goal. Jobs saw what Wozniak was doing and got excited. He said, "This could change everything. Let's sell it." At first, Wozniak wasn't sure. He didn't build computers to make money, but Jobs was persuasive. He convinced Wozniak to start a company together. They needed a name. Jobs had recently visited an apple farm. He liked the sound of the word apple. It was simple, friendly, and different from other technology names at the time. So, on April 1st, 1976, they created Apple Computer, Inc. To get started, they sold a few things. Jobs sold his Volkswagen car. Wozniak sold his calculator. They used the money to build their first product, the Apple I computer. It was not beautiful. It didn't even come with a keyboard or screen, but it worked, and it was small enough to sit on a table. They showed it to a local electronics store. The owner liked it and agreed to buy 50 computers if they could deliver them fast. So Jobs and Wozniak worked day and night. In the garage of Jobs' parents' house, they built the first 50 Apple computers by hand. It was the beginning of something much bigger than they imagined. The Apple I sold well. People were curious. They liked the idea of a personal computer. But it wasn't enough. Jobs knew they needed to take the next step. They began working on the Apple II, a real personal computer with color graphics and a plastic case. It looked more modern and friendly. In 1977, they released the Apple II. This was a huge moment. The Apple II became one of the first successful mass-market computers. Schools bought it. Families bought it. It wasn't just a machine for experts. It was for everyone. By 1980, Apple was growing fast. They had many employees. They moved out of the garage and into real offices. People started noticing this little company from California. Then came something very big. In December 1980, Apple went public, meaning people could buy shares of the company on the stock market. It was a huge success. Jobs and Wozniak became millionaires. But success brings new challenges. Apple started hiring new people, business professionals, investors, executives. Jobs was still young, in his 20s, and had no formal business training. He was passionate, but also difficult. He had strong opinions and didn't always listen to others. Still, he had a vision to create beautiful, easy-to-use computers. In the early 1980s, Apple started working on something new, a computer with a graphical user interface, where users could click icons and use a mouse instead of typing commands. This was revolutionary. Most people had never used a computer before. Jobs wanted to make it feel natural, simple, human. That dream would lead to the creation of something iconic, the Macintosh. But not everything would go smoothly. Part 2. The Macintosh and the Fall of Steve Jobs. After the success of the Apple II, the company had money, fame, and attention. But Steve Jobs was not satisfied. He didn't just want to sell computers. He wanted to change the way people felt about technology. In the early 1980s, Jobs visited a research center called Xerox PARC. There, he saw something amazing, a computer with a graphical interface. It had windows, icons, and a mouse. Instead of typing, you could click and move things on the screen. Jobs was blown away. He said, "This is the future." He took that idea back to Apple and started working on a new computer that would be simple, beautiful, and different from anything else on the market. That computer would be called the Macintosh. Jobs didn't just want to build a machine. He wanted to create a work of art. He chose a small team of engineers and told them they were going to make history. He said, "We are the pirates. We are going to do something bold." The Macintosh was designed to be personal and friendly. It had a small screen, a mouse, and an operating system that showed icons and folders. It even talked. The first model could say, "Hello." In 1984, Apple launched the Macintosh with one of the most famous TV commercials in history. It aired during the Super Bowl and was directed like a movie. It showed a woman smashing a screen that represented control and sameness. And the message was clear. 1984 won't be like 1984, meaning Apple would bring freedom and creativity to people. The Macintosh looked amazing. It felt new. It was exciting. But there was a problem. It was too expensive. And while it looked great, it was not very powerful compared to other computers at the time. Many people didn't understand how to use the mouse yet. It was ahead of its time. The sales were lower than expected. Inside Apple, things got difficult. Steve Jobs had a big vision, but he was also very demanding. He pushed people hard. Some employees admired him. Others were afraid of him. Jobs was seen as difficult to work with. He wanted perfection. He didn't like being told no. Around this time, Apple hired a new CEO named John Sculley. He came from the soft drink company Pepsi. Jobs had personally invited him by saying, "Do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life? Or do you want to come with me and change the world?" Sculley accepted. At first, they worked well together. But soon, problems started. The Macintosh wasn't doing well in the market. Jobs wanted to spend more on marketing. Sculley wanted to slow down. They disagreed on everything. Finally, in 1985, the board of directors took a side. And it wasn't Jobs. Steve Jobs, the man who started Apple in his garage, was removed from his own company. He was just 30 years old. It was a painful moment. Many thought this was the end of the Steve Jobs story. But it was only the beginning of a new chapter. After leaving Apple, Jobs didn't stop working. He started a new computer company called Next, focused on building powerful machines for universities and businesses. He also bought a small animation studio from director George Lucas. That studio would later become Pixar, the company that made Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and many other beloved movies. While Jobs was busy creating new things, Apple was having a hard time. Without Jobs' bold ideas, the company started to feel boring. The designs were not exciting. The products were not innovative. Competitors like Microsoft and IBM were growing fast. Apple lost money, it lost customers, and it started losing its identity. By the mid-1990s, Apple was in serious trouble. People were asking, can Apple survive? And that question would soon lead to a surprising decision. Apple called Steve Jobs. Part 3. The Return of Steve Jobs and the Big Comeback. In the mid-1990s, Apple was in deep trouble. The company was losing money every year. Its computers were not selling well. Customers were switching to cheaper and faster Windows machines. The company had many products, but none of them were special. People were confused. The future looked dark. In 1997, Apple made a surprising move. They bought a small computer company called Next. It was the company Steve Jobs had started after leaving Apple. The real reason behind the deal? Apple didn't just want Next's software. They wanted Steve Jobs back. Jobs returned, but not as CEO at first. He was just a special advisor. But very quickly, he became more involved. He walked around the office. He asked tough questions. He told employees to focus on what mattered. And soon, the board of directors made a bold decision. They made Steve Jobs the CEO again. He returned to the company he had created, the company that had pushed him out, and now he had a second chance. The first thing he did? He cleaned house. Apple had over 12 product lines, printers, digital cameras, many types of computers. It was too much, too confusing. Jobs said, "This is crazy. We need to focus." He drew a simple box with 4 squares, one for consumers, one for professionals, one for desktops, one for laptops. That's it. Just 4 products, not 12, not 20. This move shocked many people, but it worked. Apple focused its energy on just a few great products and made them excellent. At the same time, Jobs made another surprising decision. He partnered with an old enemy, Microsoft. He appeared on stage and told the world Microsoft would invest $150 million in Apple and continue developing Microsoft Office for the Mac. Many fans were angry, but Jobs explained, "We have to let go of the past and look to the future." Then came a new look. In 1998, Apple introduced the iMac. It wasn't just a computer, it was cool. It came in bright colors like blue, green, and orange. It had a round shape, it had a handle. It was fun, and it only had one cable. Simple to use. The iMac was designed by a young British designer named Jony Ive. Jobs loved his style and made him head of design. The iMac became a hit. It sold fast, it brought energy back to Apple, and it told the world, Apple is back. But Jobs wasn't done. He wanted to change more than computers. He wanted to change music. At the time, people were still using CDs or downloading music illegally. It was messy and slow. So Apple introduced a small, beautiful device in 2001. It was called the iPod. It let you carry 1,000 songs in your pocket. Simple, clean, powerful. The iPod changed the music world forever. But even more important, it introduced millions of people to Apple for the first time. People who never owned a computer bought an iPod. They loved it. They loved the white earphones. They loved the feeling of being different. Jobs understood this wasn't just about technology, it was about emotion. In 2003, Apple launched the iTunes Store, a place to buy music online for 99 cents per song. Legal, fast, and easy. Record companies said it wouldn't work, but it did. Millions of people started buying music online. Apple had changed another industry. By now, Apple was cool again. But Jobs was thinking even bigger. He wanted to combine the power of the iPod, the internet, and a phone. In secret, Apple began working on something that would change the world forever. Part 4. The iPhone Revolution. By the mid-2000s, Apple was riding high. The iMac had saved the company. The iPod and iTunes had changed music. People loved Apple again. But Steve Jobs wasn't done. He had a new idea, a bold one. He wanted to build a phone. But not just any phone. He didn't want buttons. He didn't want a tiny screen. He wanted something completely new. Jobs saw that phones were becoming more than just tools for calling. People used them for music, pictures, and internet. But they were ugly, hard to use, and full of problems. He thought, what if we could build a phone that people actually love using? In secret, Apple began working on the project. Internally, it was called Project Purple. Only a small team of trusted engineers and designers worked on it. They had no idea if it would succeed. It was risky. Apple had never made a phone before, and the phone industry was dominated by companies like Nokia, BlackBerry, and Motorola. But Jobs believed. In January 2007, at a big event in San Francisco, Jobs walked onto the stage and said, "Today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communicator. These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device, and we are calling it iPhone." The crowd went wild. This was the moment the world changed. The first iPhone was simple: 1 button, 1 screen, all touch. You could listen to music, make calls, browse the internet, check email, all in one place. There was no keyboard. That shocked people. Some tech experts said it would fail, but they were wrong. When the iPhone launched in June 2007, people lined up for hours to get one. It was expensive, starting at $499. But people didn't care. The iPhone wasn't just a phone. It was a status symbol, a lifestyle, a piece of the future in your hand. And it worked beautifully. Apple had done it again, but it didn't stop there. In 2008, Apple launched the App Store, a place where developers around the world could create and sell apps for the iPhone. Now the phone wasn't just a device. It became a platform. Suddenly, you could use your iPhone for everything: listening to music, taking photos, watching videos, playing games, messaging, navigating with maps, booking taxis, ordering food, learning languages, connecting with friends. The iPhone was no longer just a product. It became a part of people's daily lives. Year after year, Apple released new versions: iPhone 3G, iPhone 4, iPhone 5, and more. Each time, the cameras improved, the screens got sharper, the software became smarter. Apple also released other devices to build its ecosystem: MacBook laptops, iPad tablets, Apple Watch, AirPods. Everything worked together. You could start writing an email on your iPhone, then finish it on your MacBook. You could take a phone call on your Apple Watch. This ecosystem made customers stay loyal, and Apple became incredibly rich. By 2011, Apple passed ExxonMobil to become the most valuable company in the world, from a garage in California to the top of the world. But something sad happened that same year. In October 2011, Steve Jobs passed away after a long battle with cancer. He was only 56 years old. His death shocked the world. People around the globe left flowers and messages outside Apple stores. They remembered him not just as a businessman, but as a visionary, someone who believed in beauty, simplicity, and bold ideas. Jobs once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." And he proved it. After his death, many people wondered, Can Apple survive without Steve Jobs? The answer would come in the years that followed. Part 5. Life After Jobs and the Rise of a Giant. When Steve Jobs passed away in October 2011, the world was heartbroken. He had been the face of Apple, the leader, the visionary. Without him, people were unsure if the company could continue to grow. Could anyone replace him? Before his death, Jobs had carefully chosen his successor, Tim Cook. Tim Cook was very different from Jobs. He was calm, quiet, and careful. While Jobs was a dreamer, Cook was a master of operations, making sure Apple ran smoothly. Some people worried. They asked, can someone so quiet lead a company full of creativity? But Tim Cook didn't try to be another Steve Jobs. He led in his own way and with focus, stability, and care. And it worked. Under Tim Cook, Apple continued to grow. The company didn't slow down. In fact, it became even more powerful. The iPhone became the company's biggest success ever. Each year, Apple released a new version, iPhone 6, 7, 8, then X, 10, 11, 12, and so on. The cameras got better. The speed improved. The screens became bigger and sharper. By 2014, Apple introduced a brand new product, the Apple Watch. People didn't know if it would succeed, but soon it became the most popular smartwatch in the world. You could check your heart rate, track your steps, get messages, and even make calls, all from your wrist. In 2016, Apple released the AirPods, small wireless earbuds. At first, some people laughed at them. They looked strange, but soon everyone wanted a pair. AirPods became one of Apple's most successful products. Apple also made big moves in services. The company launched Apple Music, a music streaming service, Apple TV Plus, original shows and movies, Apple Arcade, games, iCloud, online storage, Apple Pay, a way to pay with your phone. These services gave Apple a new way to grow. Now, they weren't just selling devices. They were creating a full experience, one that people used every day, and people loved it. Apple stores were always full. New product launches caused huge lines. Fans stayed loyal. In 2018, Apple reached an unbelievable milestone. It became the first company in history to be worth $1 trillion. Just 2 years later, it reached $2 trillion. That means the total value of all Apple shares was more than many countries' entire economies. Apple had gone from a small garage startup to the most valuable company in the world. But the company didn't stop there. It kept working on privacy, making sure users felt safe with their data. It focused on accessibility, helping people with disabilities use their products. It worked on sustainability, using recycled materials, clean energy, and building a greener future. And it kept pushing the limits of technology. In 2020, Apple made a bold move again. It stopped using Intel chips in its computers and started making its own, the M1 chip. This chip was fast, efficient, and powerful. MacBooks became faster and lasted longer on battery. Apple was no longer just a design company, it was a technology powerhouse. Now Apple is working on AI, virtual reality, and health technologies. In 2023, it introduced the Apple Vision Pro, a mixed reality headset. It lets people interact with apps, videos, and games in 3D space, using just their eyes and hands. The future looks exciting, and Apple is right in the middle of it. But no matter how much it grows, people always remember where it began. A small garage in California, 2 young men, one simple idea, and a dream to change the world. You just followed the story of Apple and improved your English while doing it. Real listening, real stories, real English that sticks. If you felt inspired, if you learned something new, then don't stop here. Hit subscribe and let English become part of your lifestyle. One story at a time. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep your English flowing.